Sometimes a job comes along that nobody else wants. And you look at it and you think to yourself, a person would have to be crazy to take on that mess. Then something inside grabs you and you think to yourself, sure, it's a dirty, thankless job, but somebody has to do it. I'm BugeyeBob, and this is one of those jobs. This video covers a few miscellaneous topics. It's just stuff that I thought it was good to cover, but didn't think a long video on each topic made sense. Okay, just for the fun of it, I've been going around trying to knock off all of the this black, it looks like metallized epoxy. I've seen it used many years ago instead of regular Bondo. It's horrible stuff. They never tried to fix any of this damage. They just slapped this crud all over it. And it is a mess. And the only tool that I've found that I can get it off with is a wood chisel. Because it's the only thing that I can find that will get up underneath the edge of it to pry it loose. Like that. So that's what I've been doing for the last hour and a half on various parts of the car. And you notice this dent they actually had access to from the back side. So why the hell wouldn't you try to at least straighten it out a little bit first, instead of just slapping body putty over it? And this putty's been on so long that the original color of the car is still visible. So who knows, 50 years, 40 years, God only knows how long. Looks like the car was originally painted with a red primer coat, which is interesting. You got to get at it from the inside. That's why they did it that way. Nobody wanted to crawl inside of the trunk because you can't get in the trunk from the outside. Still, you'd think there would have been somebody that would have been willing to go in there for $5 back in those days and hammer that damn thing out. Or maybe even just use a long bar of some sort to push it out with. Some of this stuff, that's almost ½ an inch thick. They slapped some fiberglass tape underneath of it right in here. ½ inch thick of crud. So at this point I stopped and did a little bit of research on, what different ways would there be to get this stuff off. And amongst the ones that I found were things like, you can use paint stripper to take off Bondo with. And you can use airplane's paint stripper to take it off with. You can just grind it all off, and basically nothing sounded like it was a really good option. And then I remembered at one point in the past, totally unrelated to metalwork, that somebody who was doing some work on some countertops where they used epoxy to join the countertop pieces together had talked about using a heat gun to soften up the epoxy, which is odd because epoxy basically sets using heat. But they talked about using a heat gun to soften up the epoxy. So I decided to give that a try, and that's what you're going to see next. All right, let's try a little bit of recording. Let's see what happens when I do it this way. You can actually see it bubbling up off of the surface. You can also see where they just slap the stuff over the rust without digging down and getting the rust all out of there. Well, all things considered, I think the heat gun did a fairly decent job. All right. So, on each end of the block, there is a brass plug that plugs up the ends of the block because there's an oil gallery that runs from one end of the block to the other. And it's supposed to push oil from the oil filter up into there and spread it out around through the engine. So what you're supposed to do is take these things out and clean out that passage all the way from one end to the other. So I started in doing that. And of course, the first thing I did was I started to use a 1/4-inch drill and realized the better thing to do would be to cut a smaller drill in, use a smaller drill to cut a pilot hole, and then go in. And of course, what happens? Ta-da! The pilot drill breaks. Friggin' wonderful. So, busted pilot drill. So, I then got out various implements of destruction, such as center punch, to try to get it through and underneath of it, and break that out, as well as a tiny little pointed chisel. Again, remember, this is supposed to be a little piece of brass, that, like a kind of like a brass plug that you would put in the side of, or that you would put in the side of the block, freeze plug type of thing. And so what I'm trying to do now is pound this damn thing in some way to get that stupid thing cut in half. Supposedly, once you get into one end, you can use a 1/4-inch rod to push through and push out the other end, which would kind of make you think that behind this thing there would just be an empty passage that you would be able to knock the rest of that stupid busted off drill down into and be able to just go on your merry way. Well, apparently that passage is not clear all the way through, so I don't know what the hell's going on. I am going to beat on this for a little while. I can't drill it because if I try using a drill, I'm just going to hit the stub end of that busted off drill, which means I'm probably going to break another drill. And given the age of this block, I am terrified of actually cracking the block. Oh, hell no. We're down. Well, it looks to me like we're down ½ an inch. How far down in there will that go? That's all the farther it goes, right there. So we're down. Shit, that's ½ an inch right there. And we still aren't getting through, it looks like. Air hose. And we're gonna make chips fly. As you can clearly see, that tip is shot. That is shot all the way down to there. And it's not just plugged up with brass. That is worn off. It is a non-burr burr. It did cut quite a ways down in there now, though. It looks to me like that dropped down in there. Now, what's the matter of grinding that shit out? Yeah, that drill bit's falling down out of the way. That plug looks like it's 3/4 of an inch long at least. It might even be a full inch long. About like that. And run with it. All right. Let's see what we got here now. That seems to have cut through a whole lot faster that way. Let's see what we get when we try punching it down now. See if I can get this last piece out from the top. Yay! There it is, folks. The last big piece. So, how long is that thing actually? By the way, look at the outside edge of it, and you can see that it was still friggin' leaking oil past it. Says it is 0.467 inches. Well, come on now. Trust me. Really said 467. Awesome. Now, got that catastrophe over. Let's turn ourselves to these things. All right. Drill. There's that. That's not good. That's good. All right. More nasty crud. Get it up in there to where I think it's going into something. That sounds like it's hit home. Now, ain't no sense in doing this halfway. And there's no sense in ruining my fingers either. Keep the fingers out of the way of the hammer. And pound. Hammer. Engineer's hammer. 3 pound, I think. That's how you get that fucking plug out. There was no question about that one coming out. Where the hell is it at? I'll be darned if I can tell, folks. Oh, there it is. That one punched out right neat. Like hell, I could probably even reuse that one, but I won't. And now for something completely different. It turns out sometimes a pressure washer is a great paint stripper. And that's enough of that. Save a few dollars, I thought. I'll just buy the cheapest replacement floor pans I can find on eBay. The first clue there might be problems started with opening the box. Notice the panels are warped. I spent over 15 years in manufacturing companies specializing in sheet metal office and laboratory furniture, so I learned a little bit about sheet metal manufacturing. The top quality floor pans are stamped out using forming dies. It looks like these pans may have been made with a bead roller and a spot welder. I've never seen any die set or even a bead roller that leaves burn marks like this. Another look at the warping in the panel. That is about 1.5 inches of distortion from each end of the panel to the middle. I've seen some really good bead roller work on YouTube. Fitzy Fabrications, Bennett's Customs, Make It Custom, Ray Shalene's Pro Shaper Shop, etc. Check these folks out, by the way. They are excellent sources. The differences in a side-to-side comparison of the work on these panels leaves a lot to be desired. So now the problem I've faced with is figuring out how to flatten these panels out before installing them. Where do I need to stretch the metal, and where do I need to shrink it to get the pans flat? The inconsistency of the bead rolling makes me wonder if the person doing it was just learning bead rolling. Take a look at how this corner is formed. It looks as if there were several attempts to make these corners round in the indented areas. There are several separate lines impressed in the panel that make no sense. Here's another look at that same corner that gives you a good view of the distortion resulting from the work that was done on this corner. Here you can see the opposite edge of this panel also has severe distortion in it. And finally, a real close look at how these corners are made. Notice the straight lines instead of smooth curves around the corner. Also, you can see a close-up of those burn marks. The metal in those spots look like it's partially burned through from an electric arc. You can see each spot looks cratered with a center divot and a ridge around the outside edge. So it looks like I'm going to spend a lot of time fixing and flattening these panels before I install them, so they don't end up with a twisted mess during or after installation. Is saving $50 a panel worth it? Definitely not. Okay, folks, that's it for this episode of BugeyeBob. I really appreciate you watching and hope that, like me, you've learned a few things in this episode. Please like, subscribe, and comment on this video and share it with others. You can help support this project by becoming a member at patreon.com/BugeyeBob in the link below. Patreon paid members get early access to the videos and in the future will enjoy question and answer sessions and live streams. As this channel grows, future Patreon member benefits will include bonus or extended episodes, member names and credits, and the ability to suggest topics for future videos. You can follow this BugeyeBob restoration on YouTube and Facebook at the links below. Once again, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, and supporting this channel. And remember that sometimes the most important job you can do is a dirty, thankless job.